Hey creatives, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sharice B and this is Sharice in Motion. And if you are not familiar with who I be, I am an author and indie filmmaker just trying to make $1. In this space, I share my creative journey and give thoughtful film and television analysis along the way. If that sounds like that's your thing, be sure to subscribe to my channel and tap that bell for new video notifications. Okay, y'all, so for today's video, y'all saw the title. We gonna talk about it. I absolutely love the season and the series finale of Euphoria. And I recognized a lot of symbols just within the show itself, but a lot of them tied in to this last episode very beautifully, and I wanted to talk about that. So if all this sounds like a good time to you, because we're gonna be really breaking it down, then please keep watching this video and thank you for your support. First and foremost, condolences to our girl, Rue Bennett, her family, Ali, her friends that she did have. Condolences to them and condolences to us as the audience. This was so sad to see. We grew to love this character despite her disease, which is the whole point of Euphoria, to show us that, addicts deserve just as much empathy during their struggles and ultimately sometimes their death. Just because there's a stigma surrounding drug addiction as if it's a choice rather than a disease. And Euphoria showed the audience the many sides to Rue, and not just her addiction. We saw her as a daughter, as a friend, as a lover. Like all the facets that make a human, we saw that in Rue, despite her addiction. So her death felt real, and it was so heartbreaking because avid viewers of the show knew this person for 7 years. Euphoria has been in our lives for almost a decade, and Zendaya did a tremendous job bringing Rue to life. I really felt like I lost someone that I knew for 7 years. We welcomed this girl named Rue, who we were introduced to as an addict. But then as the show went on, the layers of this person was revealed to us. It was slowly peeled back to reveal this wonderful and complex human who wants to do good, but she was doomed from the start. Before we get into the symbols, just to also touch on the controversy since episode 1 of this season. My personal opinion of season 3 is that I think it's the best. It has a different aesthetics. It has a different premise, clearly, and it shows the characters in a different time in their life. And I like that it was raw and real. It wasn't sugarcoating anything for us. Honestly, when art imitates life, in my opinion, and just as an artist, I don't like seeing sugar-coated realities, especially with something as heavy as drug addiction. And I also don't like creating sugar-coated outcomes, depending on what the work is. I thought that season 3, because it takes place 5 years post high school graduation for these characters, the real world coincides with who these kids were in high school. And I also think that this particular group of kids that the show focuses on, I think they did peak in high school. And then we see their life post high school, and it's not the most glamorous. They're not out here changing the world. They're not curing cancer. They're living up to the person that they were in high school. But overall, I enjoyed this series. I experienced a literal roller coaster of emotions watching this particular episode. And even if the reality of Rue's decisions due to her disease, I guess, were exaggerated in this season, according to the internet, that's typically how bringing awareness works. Although this isn't high school anymore, her mother giving up on her and her sister being away at college shows the reality of what happens when people can no longer help an addict, or they can't love an addict through their disease. She was left alone in the world with nothing but predators surrounding her and snakes, which we're going to get into. And it's scary. I believe that Sam Levinson did a great job really showing us that everyone's survival may look extreme to someone else, but that's the point. That's what bringing awareness to something as heavy as addiction does. Everything seems exaggerated, but it's really not. Let's get into these symbols. There were several symbols woven into this one episode that I thought were nicely baked into the show's overall message. So let's explore those now. Let's start with the heaviest one of all, Rue's death sequence. Throughout the series, we've seen the house that Rue lives in with her mom and her sister become so many things. It was a sanctuary. It was a boxing ring on some occasions. There was a lot of memories in that home as well. That was where her father passed away at himself also. And that's just where her family has always lived. It was nice to see her finally come home at the end of this season, because throughout the entire season, she was not at home. She was in all of these unfamiliar and dangerous places, and finally seeing her come home during her death sequence was really comforting, but it also did sadden me because I could see from the time she stepped in that house that it was time for Rue to go. I loved how the blocked routes to her home with the police was just a symbol for how Rue was trying to basically hold on to her life, but unfortunately the fentanyl-laced pills that Alamo gave her was doing its job, and she was slipping in real time, but the blocked routes, I believe, was her mind trying to hold on. And I also picked up on how one of the policemen said it's unsafe when she was trying to get past the blocked route, which eventually turned out to ring true for her, that it was unsafe because she was ODing. I did not really fully grasp that Rue was officially dying until she stepped in that house. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I really thought Fez got out of jail for a second and she went to go get him. But as things started to enmesh together and the surrealism really hit, I was like, oh man, she is slipping. So that was really heartbreaking to see, but it was so beautiful as well. I really enjoyed seeing Rue hug her dad as the final image. I love seeing her hug both her parents because that's all she wanted in the end. But the final image of her hugging her dad was, of course, the symbol to her succumbing to the overdose. Next, let's talk about snakes and rats. The snake in the tank at the Silver Slipper, of course. Bishop's story to Rue about Kitty's albino python was a warning to her about Alamo on the surface, but I also think it could serve as a second meaning of Bishop sharing his plan for Alamo with Rue, basically speaking in code, because it wasn't until the end that we saw that Bishop was going to play Alamo this entire time. We don't know the reason why. I don't have the reason why in my head just yet. I don't know why Bishop decided to turn on Alamo. I'm glad he did, but I don't know why. But I thought the snake in the tank story, that was a great symbol for basically how Alamo was doing Rue. Because when we go back to earlier episodes, when Alamo was introduced to Rue, he did say from the beginning he doesn't like junkies. And on top of that, because we now know Alamo's backstory, thanks to episode 6, we also know that he doesn't like women. So a woman junkie who he already can't trust, he kills people that he didn't trust. Alamo, at the end of the day, was a notorious drug dealer, but he was also a murderer. So clearly one of the main themes in this series, but especially in this season, was faith. If you are of the Christian faith, then you probably would have recognized that snakes put into this season in particular is basically a symbol for the snakes in the Bible. There are many people in Bible stories that are perceived as snakes, especially Judas. Also, just the snake in Genesis. That's the very first snake in the Bible. And my interpretation of just that can also speak to Alamo coercing Rue to trust the Percocets he gave her. Just like how the snake deceived Eve to eat the apple, Alamo definitely had an agenda with giving Rue those Percocets. He was a pure snake throughout the entire episode, and even when he was nice, something was off, because that's not of his nature to be nice, especially to Rue. But yes, I believe Alamo is definitely that snake in Genesis. And then for rats, just to touch on that, a lot of rats, and the term rat was said a lot in this season. I can't recall what episode it was, but I remember Alamo having a monologue about rats. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, in the comments, but did Alamo have this monologue after Rue decided to cooperate with the DEA? He didn't know yet, but I believe he was alluding to the fact that, like, there's a rat within the camp and he gonna find out who it is. Because remember that stripper Magic with the neck brace? Magic was the first one to even put the bug in Alamo's ear that Rue is on some shiesty stuff. So in that monologue where he's talking about a rat within the camp, he definitely was directing that to Rue. Also, did y'all pick up on the dead rat in the ambulance when they switched the cars, bringing it across the border? So y'all know that scene where Kitty was being transferred after getting her BBL. There was a rat under the floorboard, and that rat definitely died due to those laced drugs. When I saw that rat in the ambulance, that's also when I knew, oh, for certain that Rue was going to die in this episode, because I remember that speech that Alamo had about a rat. And I wish I could remember word for word what it was or even what episode, but I remember Alamo making it clear that he was going to find that rat and he was going to do the rat in. And when I saw that rat in the ambulance, that to me was Rue, which also serves, of course, as a foreshadowing and a symbol of Rue's fate. So when Ali went to go settle his score with Alamo down at the Silver Slipper, I really enjoyed how he was in his uniform. And in that instance, he was very honorable. He shaved. He wasn't doing this sponsor woo 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 stuff no more. It was interesting to see how Ali's final words at an A meeting ring true to him carrying out his vengeance. And the line when he said, "I want to find a better way to be of service," was like literal. And when we honor veterans or have a Memorial Day or any type of holiday like that, we always say thank you for your service. So I thought that was nice that truly Ali was doing a service by ridding the world of these horrible drug dealers with his uniform on. And in a sense, Ali went to war for his daughter, Rue. He literally put on his uniform to head out and go to war for Rue and avenge her. And honestly, shout out to Sam Levinson. I really think he did his big one with this episode in giving those who lost someone to addiction just that fantasy of punishing these corrupt drug dealers who perpetuate the fentanyl crisis that we're currently in. Earlier, I said that faith is definitely one of the main themes of this show, particularly this season, and that definitely was shown in many, many ways. So let's get into those. Of course, the main religious reference is just the name of the episode itself is "In God We Trust." It's interesting how we always see the phrase "In God We Trust" on money, and how America kind of tries to always tie in faith and money, and they tether them together. And shows like Euphoria, especially this season, kind of end up being the result of tethering those things together. But I also peeped how when Rue was in her dying scene, we saw that her mom, Leslie, was reading from the Bible. And that was evident, of course, to see. Like, I just saw her reading and I was like, of course, she's reading the Bible, because Rue was already having a coming to Jesus moment throughout this entire season. In earlier season, she said she did not believe in God, but we saw that her faith was finally being awakened in her in this last season, which is usually the pipeline for addicts. When they start to find God, it's because, in a sense, they believe that God saved them from basically overdosing and dying. And there's been many times where addicts have been saved or their life has been spared, and then they go on this path to righteousness and they start questioning God and the world and their faith. I noticed that Rue's mom was reading Psalms 115 when she began to slip. And I only saw the first verse, and then I went back and read that whole chapter, honestly. And the first verse talks about, "Not to us, Lord, not to us, but to your name be the glory because of your God and faithfulness." To me, that spoke to how Rue was grappling with her faith in earlier seasons, but she was starting to come around to the thought of having faith just off the strength of what she had endured this whole season. Rue had faithfulness. Although it didn't seem like it, she has faithfulness that she would eventually get this monkey off of her back, even though in earlier seasons she said she's never going to stop using. But she tried. I saw on Threads that a user pointed out that Rue died on October 13th, 2024. That's so sad. And pointed to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13 through 24. 24, but then I actually opened my Bible and there's not 24 verses. So I'm not sure what the 24 means, but if we want to attribute that to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, we can do that. And the entire scripture, it tells believers that anything spoken or done without love as the foundation is nothing. I thought that was an interesting theory pertaining to how Rue was in hindsight in pursuit of love after losing her father, someone she loved herself immensely. So no one does anything in this life without love being the foundation. Everything we do in this life is to seek love, to find love, to be love. And that's the honest truth, Ruth. I thought that was interesting that user pointed it out, and they pointed directly to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, 13, because they could have pointed to any other book in the Bible. The book of Corinthians is basically a letter, I believe, from the Apostle Paul. I could be mistaken. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But the Apostle Paul giving instructions to people, the believers of Jesus, of how to love and how to be of love as well. I also saw the religious reference of Rue being reincarnated as the calf. That theory is floating around online, and I wholeheartedly believe it myself as well. I believe that calf at the end on the farm that Rue visited in episode 1 of this season, I believe that was Rue reincarnated because she said that she wanted to go back to that farm once she got clean and legit and was free from Alamo and Lori and all of that. And its mother had the calf 3 months after Rue passed. So we can speak to reincarnation in that sense. Many religions believe in a reincarnation of some sort or a heaven of some sort that people go to. And I believe that the farm was Rue's heaven. The birth of the calf was seen as a miracle as well. And that's very prominent in the Christian faith, that when a miracle happens, it has to be the work of God. And Ali's prayer at the table, touching, powerful, and comforting prayer for the grieving. I felt every word he said. And as someone who's lost many people in my life and didn't know what to do with my grief and didn't have the proper comfort during my grieving, I fully appreciated that prayer from Ali. And people are pointing out about this particular episode, Rue did not narrate whatsoever. We did hear Rue's final words, "May God bless us all." And those were her final words before the show ended. And I believe Rue saying just those 5 words was a message that even those suffering from addiction deserve God's grace and God's blessings. Addicts in our society are treated as lepers in the Bible, another religious reference as well, which is why I think that tying in religion and just faith within this type of topic is appropriate and realistic for the most part. Leviticus chapter 13, it tells the story of how those suffering from leprosy were to be exiled from the community to avoid becoming an epidemic. So if you've ever met someone who is an addict, you've probably had people in your life tell you to stay away from that person, or you can't help that person, especially if you were in a relationship or currently in a relationship with someone who struggles with addiction. Society subconsciously treats addicts like the lepers of the Bible, and we cast them out of the community because we don't want them to poison others or cause harm to themselves. And we do this by sometimes just cutting all communication, like how Rue's mom did. And we also do this by exiling them from the community by checking them into rehab. So I thought that was a nice comparison as well, and something I noticed just within the religious references. And lastly, Lexi reading the entire Bible after Rue died was definitely a symbolism of how she felt that guilt about their last interaction before Rue died, because she was dismissing all of the things that Rue was trying to talk to her about, basically finding her faith and wanting to talk about it with her childhood friend. And their relationship was strained by the time the series even started due to her addiction. Honestly, if Lexi had a TikTok reviewing books, I would be an avid follower, because I thought it was interesting how she summarized the Bible as the universal theme of just keep going despite bad things happening. Because in hindsight, hindsight, the Bible is just full of stories of how to navigate this life that is so hard. And I interpreted that as Sam Levinson's message to the younger generation to face their problems head on rather than turning to drugs as a method in escaping the pain that they endure on a daily basis, especially in their adolescence, because being a teenager is painful. And I really liked how Lexi was the character that Sam Levinson picked to be the one to pick up that Bible after Rue passed and really read what she was trying to digest and communicate to her friends and the people around her, just as she was trying to unravel her new era and really change for the better. Let's talk about that showdown, y'all, between Ali and raggedy ass Alamo, okay? And this face-off had to be a Western showdown, y'all. It had to be. The season itself had a Western theme to it, which I believe was a great symbol for showing just good guys and bad guys. Because in Westerns, there's no in-between. And most of the time, we're going to root for the good guy. So in the Western showdown scene, of course, the good guy is Ali and Alamo is the bad guy. And I like how the Western genre in this case was used as the theme of good versus bad, and how our society kind of operates off that, where they never give a gray area to people or nuance. Even the conversation behind Rue relapsing or she didn't relapse in people's opinion, that is showing that there's a lack of nuance. We're kind of operating how we see Westerns, where it's like, this person did this one bad thing, so they're a bad guy. And this one person did one noble thing, and they're a good guy. And I like how Euphoria grasped that genre and weaved all of its elements into this season. Touching on Western elements, and although it was crazy to see, the scene where Rue gets lassoed in the opening was perfect. It really showed how she is caught up so heavily in this world due to her addiction that she keeps getting lassoed into trouble. Everything in this season, especially this episode, was intentional. Don't ever think anything was random. I love how that scene in particular was a full circle moment for Rue and how she's been moving this entire series, basically. How she kept running from her troubles and eventually kept getting lassoed in to more and more trouble until she couldn't get out. So yes, that's my take on the whole Western showdown and just the Western genre in general that played a huge part in this season. And lastly, let's get on to the American Dream, which is definitely an underlying theme within this whole season. I believe Euphoria rings true to how currently American teens behave and what the issues they are dealing with, housed under the illusion of the American dream. Because the American dream is still being sold to all of us. It's being sold to people who don't live in this country. And under this American dream is so much chaos. The episode's final image of an American flag hanging in front of the farmhouse, did y'all see that it was a torn American flag? To me, that image reminded me of the painting of Mona Lisa. I thought that from afar, at first glance, when I watched the episode for the first time, it looked like a pristine American flag. But then when I watched it for the second time, I saw that the flag was torn a little bit. And it was hanging in front of that pristine, perfect farmhouse that Rue had visited in episode 1. And to me, that perfect image to close the show where chaos ensued since episode 1 was similar to how the American dream is portrayed to the world as this cookie cutter family with a white picket fence, but there's so much destruction happening under the veil of that dream that often comes at a price. I want to touch on Cassie though. The cinematography alone within Cassie's final image showed us that perfection comes at a price. We have that wide shot of her all alone. When we panned out, we see that Cassie is the doll in this beautiful dollhouse, swimming in debt higher than what the home is actually worth. And that is tragic, tragic, tragic. And that just ties in what the American dream is. Many Americans are living in debt for many reasons. And in Cassie and Nate's story, they went to great lengths to keep up with an image that they could not afford, which is what most people do in America because this is such a capitalistic country. We're always trying to keep up with the Joneses. Cassie was the perfect doll with the dream house, the fancy car, the money, the clothes, but alas, no Ken at the end of the day because Nate's dead. And it shows that when you chase the American dream or something that you believe is going to make your life better just because you have it, it shows that there is an ugly side to America and a lot of things are swept under the rug in order to have this image that everyone else envies. All right, y'all, that is enough yapping for today. I hope that you enjoyed this breakdown. But if you stayed through this video, thank you so much for your support. And I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of my analysis. Comment below your thoughts on Euphoria Season 3, Episode 8, In God We Trust. Let me know if you have any of your own interpretations. And what did you think overall about this season and this show? Let me know. Don't be scared. If you enjoyed this analysis and want to see more thoughtful film and TV analysis, go ahead and gift me a thumbs up on this video and subscribe to the channel so you can join the Creative Hive. Bye, creatives. Thanks so much for tuning in.